Hi, you're listening to the ASC Podcast. ASC is a private therapy clinic specialising in supporting young people and their families. The ASC It Podcast encourages talking about talking, facilitates your own inner wisdom, and rather than providing answers, considers good questions. If fear was a thing, how would you describe it? What images come to mind?
Well, you've obviously firstly got the most stereotypical one, being this big looming monster, this huge, scary, impassable thing that you can't really get past without a concerted amount of effort. Or the other way, which sort of more relevant to me, is like a black hole. It's just sort of, doesn't matter what you throw at it, it always seems just to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and becomes more overwhelming the more the more you keep trying to deal with it. Or leave it alone. Whatever you do with it, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Okay, all the time?
Some of the time.
Yeah,
because you're not always scared. But
no.
Yeah.
So what feels more appropriate to you, the big black hole or the big scary monster?
Oh, as a personal thing for me, the black hole is a bit more appropriate because you leave it alone, it gets worse. In my case, fear is it's like a looming thought in the back of your head all the time.
And do you mean the kind of black hole like we can imagine is in space, where it just sucks up anything that's in its near vicinity? Yeah. So when you're faced with that black hole, what happens? What happens to you?
Oh, it's almost similar to depression. Like, everything becomes ridiculously difficult, so you just want to retreat into a space that you feel safe in. So for my personal example, that would be my room and my computer. Basically hide away from whatever's causing me to be scared.
Mm-hmm. And you said it's like this big looming thing in the back of your head. Is that how you experience and feel fear in your body?
Well, yeah, I don't face it a lot of the time, so it's always there. It's always an ever-present thing in my head, but it's not always at the forefront of my my mind. I have social anxiety. I get scared meeting new people, and that's when it comes out. It's an ever-present looming thing in the back of my mind. Sometimes will emerge into my conscious brain, and sometimes just stays in the subconscious.
How I experience fear is very different from that. So for me, it's what I would say is more visceral. So when I feel fear, it starts as a prickle in my whole body, and it concentrates in this central part here. So what I find really awful about fear is how overwhelming it is, but in a very physiological, felt way. And then obviously, after that comes a bunch of thoughts associated with that, negative thoughts. But my first experience of fear is bodily, like being hit by a truck kind of thing. So our experiences are very, very different.
Well, everyone deals with fear differently, everyone feels it differently. A experienced businessman might feel scared if he's going for a big deal. He gets really sweaty and gets really anxious. Their body starts going into overdrive. Start heating up and get palpitations. Some people feel it deep in their gut, and it's almost like a soul-crushing feeling. In my case, I feel it in the back of my head. You get so scared that you have a negative outlook.
So you said about being scared of meeting new people and being scared in social settings. So that's your trigger.
Well, one of them, yeah.
One of them, yeah. What are some others?
Meeting new people, going to a new job is a very scary thing for me, because it's just a completely new environment filled with new people. They're the two biggest ones. Fear of rejection. You can get that in many different facets of your life. Get declined from jobs. I don't really feel it by getting rejected by girls. It makes me quite scared to go up and say how I feel about somebody, which quite a lot of guys nowadays actually do experience that.
Lots of guys experience.
Well, just being scared of rejection, or scared of asking people out because they could look like a fool.
Mm-hmm. And you think a lot of young men find that difficult?
Well, definitely, it's a scary experience. It depends on the person, because there is a very personal experiences. No one's going to be scared of the same thing. If they are, then there's usually different factors that even with similar fears. I've got a very irrational fear of heights. Just looking down from a second story on a scaffold you know, and it's just a little bit of shaking and my legs just go out and I'm completely just like distraught.
But in a way, being scared of heights makes a kind of logical sense, because obviously, you know, if you fall from high, you can seriously hurt yourself, or you could die. If social anxiety, meeting new people, fear of rejection are all the triggers, what do you think you're really, really frightened of underneath it all?
I feel like fear, it comes in one of two stages. So you get instinctual fear and mental fear, conscious fear. So I say social anxiety, you know you've got a problem with it. So
with the social anxiety.
Yeah, so yeah. You know you're going to be getting into a situation where you're going to be a bit scared. I have really no reason to be scared of going to see new people. For like a lot of people, that's a really easy thing to deal with, but for me, it's not. So, and I'm very consciously aware that I am scared of that. That's not a rational fear to have, it's more of an irrational fear. Instinctual fear is like, you know, being scared of like spiders, you know, the proper phobias, you know, spiders, heights. These are actual things that can kill you, you know, so it's like your instincts are screaming at you, you know, this is not safe, to stay away, you know, that's where the whole terror comes in and gives you that adrenaline rush, so run away from the danger that's in front of you, like, you know, your snakes, your spiders, or whatever. You know, that, you know, that's not something that, you know, you consciously are aware of. It's more an instinct-based thing, like animal instincts, basically. It's definitely something that you see more nowadays than you did in the past, because social anxiety is one of the most common ones now. You know, exam anxiety. Who would have had that like back in the day? I mean, if they did, it was literally because they were going through an exam for knighthoods. They could die in them, so that's quite, you know, normal.
Reasonable anxiety.
That's quite reasonable.
So you're saying that actually some anxieties, some fears are intrinsic to the time in history, to the era, to the culture, to...
Yeah. Back in the day, the fear of getting ill. There's a mixture of, you know, biblical fear, because, you know, everyone thought it was
fear of God.
The fear of God and the fear of the devil had gotten inside you. That's what people thought the, you know, epileptic seizures were back in the day. And
demons.
Because they were completely terrified of demons. That was, you know, if you got ill or had something wrong with you, it was you know, God was either doing something bad to you or some demon got inside you. You know, nowadays we don't really have that. You know.
No, but underneath it all, I guess, is it all boils down to the same thing, that when you're fearful, you imagine that something terrible, something dire is going to happen to you, and you won't be able to cope with that.
All fear is basically irrational. It's reasonable to be scared, but it's not rational to be scared.
Why do you make the difference between what's reasonable and what's rational?
Well, for instance, if you're in a life-threatening situation, it's very reasonable to be scared.
For sure.
But when you're scared, you don't really think rationally.
No, you don't.
You know, it's like it is quite an irrational state of being. You know, you won't be thinking in a logical manner if you're scared.
I can see the point you're making, because when you're fearful, all your body's doing is going, get out, or fight, i.e. fight or flight. And what you're saying is what you really need is to be able to get in touch with all those logical problem-solving skills and think your way out of the problem. But actually, that's the last thing that's available to you when you're in that state.
Yeah, which is why I say it's reasonable to be scared. But it doesn't mean that it's rational for you to do that in situations where your life is in danger, and one thing you want to be doing is constantly thinking rationally about what can I do to get out of this situation. So the minute fear takes over, you do just stop thinking in that rational manner. Okay,
so why do you think you have social anxiety? Where did it come from?
Environment, isn't it?
The environment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have had a history of bullying. It was because it was large groups of people. You know, I can't get around that. So, you know, it made, like, whenever I do meet new people, I always feel like, okay, like, this could go really badly. Yeah.
So you've learned that you can't necessarily trust strangers or trust people.
Yeah. That's literally, you know, that's how it works for me. That is an environmental thing. That's not something that I've had since I was born. I was a very, you know, extroverted, you know, happy-go-lucky child when I was growing up. So it's just so yeah. A lot of the fear that I experience with this is quite environmental. Like the only reasonable fear that I have is to heights, really. So,
Yeah. How do you think that fear has got in your way?
Oh.
Has it got in your way?
Oh, yeah. I mean, take for example, every person who's left secondary school nowadays have a prom, but I didn't go.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly because I was just scared that it was going to be one more day of getting picked on. You know, I was really scared to go. You know, that's just one instance.
Do you regret that then? Do you wish you had gone?
I don't know. I partly do, partly don't. It's a bit regretful. You know, I've you know had some times where I've had opportunity to do things with people in like university or you know just in college and stuff, and I went nah, sorry. Or even when I like some work nights, just was a bit scared of doing something, so I went no. Just said no, and ended up there when I had a really good time, and then there was me just like, oh, I wish I went now. You know, and that's the biggest thing that sort of impacts you. You know, when you have social anxiety, you get scared to do anything that puts you outside of your comfort zone. You know, and you do end up missing out on a lot of things. When you look back at it, you do then just genuinely think, why the hell did I not do anything?
So it leads to lots of regret then.
Yeah.
Do you think that you've missed out on a lot of opportunities, not just going out? Has it affected you in other ways?
It probably has affected my confidence to get jobs, definitely. I have a bit of a fear of, you know, applying for jobs because I don't really want to be put in a new environment, new people. That very fear affects me going into interviews. You know, I've got every reason in the world to feel like that considering how my life's been, but it's a very stupid fear to have, and it really does screw your life up because you end up being too terrified to do anything, well, that, you know, that you could get some benefit out of, you know. Especially in this day and age, you know, having a stable job is something that everyone needs, especially to just live a happy life anyway. And I can't get that easily because of my own fears. So, you know, I'm inadvertently screwing my own life up doing that. That specific thing can hold you back, but other fears can hold you back in different areas, you know. So, let's say you've got a fear of speaking, you know. Your dream job is, say, you know, being an on-stage comedian. Your fear of speaking, let's be honest, your dream's going to be escaping your grasp. Well,
you've got to overcome some massive barrier before you can get on towards your goal.
Yeah, which is exactly what, you know, when I was working in retail, having this social anxiety, you have to put your fear on hold because your job's on the line for it. People say confronting your fears is the best way to overcome it. You know, it's still scary.
So you don't think that confronting your fears helps?
No, what it can teach you to do is sort of push it aside a little bit, but it doesn't. The confronting your fear doesn't necessarily get rid of your fear.
Not at first, no.
No. Best way to look at it is the more you confront your fear, the more you're sort of numbing it. It's not that it's gone. If you've got a deeply entrenched fear, it's always going to be there, and it's all right to accept that. There's nothing wrong with it. You've got to keep facing it, so it's just a very slight nervousness. It's still going to be there.
So okay, so we're not aiming necessarily to get rid of the fear altogether. What we're aiming to do is lessen it. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's all you can do.
Yeah.
Because it's impossible to get rid of, you know, intrinsic fears like that. Because if you have got a very deep set root, you know, in-rooted fear, it's not going to go. You know, you can teach somebody how to deal with their fear, but their fear is not going to be gone. You know.
So you don't have a very hopeful outlook.
No, it's not so much I don't have a hopeful outlook. Anybody can learn to overcome their fear. For instance, there's this YouTuber who I watch a lot, and he has a disgusting fear of spiders. Like to the point where he throws up if he sees them. And someone sent him a package that had a tarantula encased in like a glass container, and he just challenged him to say, you know, just sleep with it on your dressing table. And he got to a point where he could lift it up, touch it, but he still had the fear. He was able to look at it. He was able to, you know, actually juggle with it if he felt like it. So it's like he could do it, but he said he was still terrified of it.
But it didn't make him throw up, and he could face it.
Yeah. So So I'm saying you can still face your fears, but do not buy anybody saying that you'll, you know, you won't have that fear anymore.
Yeah, because you don't know that.
No, we don't know that, and it's more than likely that you will always have it. You know, it's not a bad thing to be scared, but it's just, you know, the thing everyone's got to do is learn how to deal with it.
Yeah.
You know, which is, you know, something that I'm still learning to do. You know.
What progress do you think you've made from where you were?
Oh, since I've been forced into having to work with my fear, I mean that in the literal sense, the workplaces that I've been to, I have to actually deal with it like there and then. It does very quickly sort of become a very easy thing to do. Obviously my fear is not as deep rooted as someone like some people who've got genuine phobias. Like I don't really have a genuine phobia apart from the heights thing, but even then that's not as bad as other people's. It's not easy to do, but it gets easy quickly is what I'm getting at. The longer you keep at it, the quicker you'd realise it's actually easier, it's easier to get to grips with it. It's quite a quick process to actually start overcoming your fears, but it takes a while for you to get the confidence to even begin facing it in the first place. That's why it seems like it takes ages for you to sort the problem out.
So through going to work, and in your particular case having to deal with members of the public, strangers, you've been forced into a place where you've had to confront your fear, and then as you said, then you start having to get over it because you're doing it every day, and it's the beginning the process that you think is difficult. Are there any other ways in which you think you've made progress with fear?
Being able to talk about it.
Yeah.
For some reason or another, people who get terrified of certain things, they will not say it. And everyone knows why. It's saving face. It's like you don't want to admit that you're scared of doing something. It's further from the truth. You got to firstly admit that you are scared. Then you've got to say, find someone to talk to, to admit that you are scared about whatever you're scared about.
Is it a relief to tell someone when you finally do?
That's the thing. It's not so much a relief, but you want, especially if it's a close member of your family, at least try and find a way to tell them that this, thing scares you. And in some cases, it's probably better to sort of take how you deal with it out of your own hands, because you won't deal with it otherwise.
Yeah. So get someone to help you.
Yeah. So in my case, I knew I had a problem. I talked to my parents about it, and then I got sent to psychotherapy, and that has helped me a lot. But on top of that, when it came to finding jobs from, I wouldn't have found some of the jobs that I've had without my parents just finding them and then just literally almost forcing me into the interviews. And I'm all the better for it. So, if you've got a very deeply entrenched fear, do not rely on yourself to solve it, rely on other people to solve it for you. And it's almost like the reverse of how you teach people to deal with other mental illnesses. What a lot of people try and tell you, how to do it is just on your own. You can't do that with fear. Fear is the other way around. You've got to get people to force you into situations where you're forced to deal with it. It's almost like you're playing football. Fear is almost like a very team-orientated sport. It's not a solo effort.
I love that. That's a great way of saying it. It's a team-oriented sport. It's not a solo effort.
Yeah, well, it is. It's like, at the end of the day, fear, if you have people forcing you into these situations that you're terrified of, you're going to get used to it eventually. There's still a whole lot of effort that you've got to put in personally.
I think I agree with you. I think it's very hard to describe when you're frightened of something, because I think the feelings are so intense, and sometimes you don't think that other people get it. Unless they experience it, you don't think that they get how intense and debilitating it is. And for me, I think I agree with you that there's no absolute solution. What I find for myself is that I can see fear coming now before it turns up altogether and swallows me up, and I find that I'm in and out of it quicker perhaps, but nonetheless, fear is still there. It hasn't gone away. And I think maybe what we're also saying is that a certain level of fear or anxiety is necessary and is logical.
Fear is primal. It's a very primal instinct that we still have.
Absolutely.
So we're going to experience it, regardless of how strong-willed a person we are. Everyone's going to be scared of something at some point in their lives. In my case, meeting new people, others, it will be like speaking, fears of heights, animals. Hell, there are people who have fears of holes.
Fears of spoons.
Yeah, fears of spoons. It seems really stupid. People have these fears. Fear is everyone has one. Everyone has fears of something. funny as it is, there are thousands upon thousands of people and they've actually got social anxiety. So they all find their own way to deal with it. Others, like one person I know, when he has to speak in front of loads of people, he puts sunglasses on so people can't see his eyes.
Yeah.
You know,
little tricks.
Yeah, it's just little tricks can help you out. But you know, it's like, you know, then the most obvious one, I think everyone has this fear of dying.
Yes.
You know, and that's one fear that no one's ever going to be able to get away from.
No.
You know.
And I think I take the view that that's really what's underneath of all fears. It's fear. Well, I'd go even beyond fear of dying. It's fear of annihilation. It's fear of losing oneself in some way.
That's very much accurate description of what fear is. It's like your fear is a fear of, you know, losing yourself. Losing yourself,
indeed. Yeah.
My social anxiety really does come from the fact that I am always and probably will always be an outsider. Me trying to fit in with people means I will have to give up pieces of myself to do it. That is a scary thought. It's my personal example, you know, it is just a fear of losing one's being, really, you know, and that can be whatever you deem it to be, but that is probably the most purest sense of what fear is.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
So I guess we're saying that we think we can lessen fear, we can find our own ways of managing fear, but fear is instinctual, it's part of us, and what we just want to make sure of is that that black hole doesn't swallow us up.
Yeah.
Thank you. So there it is, the ASC It Podcast, talking to a 22-year-old young man and asking the question, what does fear look like? Thanks for listening.